Hi there, everyone. It's Robin Norgren with faithandcreativity.com and also the My Creative Peace Christian Creativity Facilitator Program. And I am doing the third installment of the projects that are listed in the book My Creative Peace. So this one is, there's a beautiful story behind this one. I put this together for a little girl's birthday. She was turning 6 years old, and I posted some pictures on my blog, and I had someone approach me that worked with at-risk teen girls, and she asked me if I could update this a little bit and make it more of a self-esteem project. So from there, I thought this would be a great project for us to do together as well. So it's basically going to be a sunburst on watercolor paper, but where the details and the way that it makes it more personal and more about you and your reflection in your creative life is in the details that I'm going to show you. All right, so this is the basics of what it's going to look like, but again, I'm going to give you some variations on it. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some blue paint and add it to our palette. And then we're going to paint the background of the paper. Now you have a couple of different options here. You can get a really fat paintbrush, but you can also do things like the really big foam brushes can be used, which actually I have used in the past. And they're really great for easy spreading, especially for a large surface. You also can, instead of using a paintbrush, you can take something like a sponge and just sponge paint the whole thing. You can choose to use watercolor rather than acrylic paint if you don't want this deep of a blue on your project. So it just really depends on what kind of style you're going for. If you want it, just a nice deep blue. This color is called Award Blue, and it's by Apple Barrel. But there's all sorts of blue that you can use, obviously. I have a fan on in this room, so that is going to help this to dry fairly easily. If you don't have a fan or it's not ventilated where you're at, the next part of the project where you're choosing what kind of paper you're going to use for the sun ray should allow for the time that it takes to dry this project, the background. But if in the event it's still not dry, I always make sure to have a hair dryer handy, and you can get those fairly cheaply if you don't use the one from your home at like a Goodwill or a thrift store for $10, and you just have that available. And actually I always try to have something like that available for any of my projects, because if you're anything like me, you can hardly find the time to get a project done. And so when you finally find 20 minutes to get a project done, the last thing you want to be doing is waiting around for the paint to dry. So it's complete. I'll go ahead and move this over to the side to let it dry. Next step is I'm going to look through my stack of craft paper, and I'm going to decide which pages I want to use as my sun rays. What you're doing is, I would say you probably need about 7 sun rays. We'll look at the initial project. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, that's right. So you either want to do 7 different colors, or if you want to just do alternating colors, that's fine as well. Again, you have that option as well to just use these strips rather than as stencils, to go ahead and use stencils and stencils on stencils, use that as a palette, and then just use these to create different designs of different colors and styles. But again, I've decided to go ahead and just use the craft paper. I like this Find Your Wings. So I will just pull out my 7 strips. So there's 1. And of course, you can use it if you're doing this in a group. You can mix and match and, you're doing projects with friends, maybe you want to have all the same ones as kind of a memory of the time together. So the best way to use this as stencils is to use the back side of the paper. My paper is blank on the back, and so that's helpful for when I stencil out my sun rays. So right now I am trying to find my pencil that I had on the table. There it is. And so again, you know, you don't have to be perfect with this because obviously it's just more about the process. You can also use a ruler if you really want to get a sense for just getting it very precise. And I'm just kind of doing it randomly, so I'll be surprised when I turn them over as far as which ones I'm using. I'm not a very precise crafter because for me, it's really less about the end product and more about what it does for me intrinsically. Like I said, this is part of a series for my facilitators, my constituents, through the My Creative Peace Creativity program. It's geared towards Christians, but anyone can take it. And I'm a huge component that art can heal, and so that's kind of the stance I take when I'm doing my projects. It's really not about, I mean, I love beautiful things, don't get me wrong, but I feel like there's more an emotional impact that happens when you're doing it, as opposed to what the product looks like at the end. So that's how I approach my teaching as well. Okay, so I think I have them almost finished. And again, you see how I didn't stay on the stencil on that one. So we'll see how those come out. And of course you can adjust them as you need to. All right, so I'm going to put these papers over to the side. I'm going to come back. My paper is fairly dry. I'm just checking on it, and it seems like there's still some wet spots here. So I'll move it back over the corner, and I will take this time to start cutting out my sun rays. Creativity is something that just came into my life probably, oh gosh, I say it's not that long ago, but it's starting to get up there. Back in 2008, when I was newly had a baby. Husband had just deployed. Didn't really know how to be a full-time mom. Didn't have a lot of family support at that time. And so God brought me to a place to start thinking about this creative piece, is what it's now called, but that's not what I called it back then. I just needed something to do with my mind and my hands. I had made the decision not to go back to work so that my daughter wouldn't miss out on having both my husband deployed and then me at work all day. And so I had to figure out what to do with myself because I was so used to working so many hours. And so started with crocheting, because that's something my mom taught me years ago. And then over the course of about a year, started really seeing the benefits emotionally and spiritually with me creating. And started to journal about it, and that's what turned into the My Creative Peace book. And then I started writing about the Psalms and collaboration, because I did a couple of collaborations, and yeah, it just kept on growing and growing, and I'm just amazed when I look back that it was from that time of real desperation that God used it. So, all right, so here we are. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I know we already decided we need 7, but I'm going to start with these for now and then just kind of decide based on how it comes out which piece of paper I'm going to add as the 7th one. So again, it's So interesting. You take a project that's fairly simple like this and you think, oh, I just can knock it out pretty quickly. And you can. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You can, and you can get the benefit from it too, I think, because you still get to make choices and be creative. But I think there's a piece of it as well, P-I-E-C-E, where you slow down the process and see what more you can do rather than how quickly can I get through it. And I talk about this when I teach children and when I teach adults and when I teach myself. And I also teach yoga too, and you find the same thing. It's not about whether your body can quickly get into a pose, it's what you're feeling while you're there and how long you can stay in it. So, all right, so what I'm doing now is I'm taking that paper plate and I am drawing kind of a half circle on here. You can place that circle wherever you want. So if you want it to be a full circle, you can put it completely out there, half circle. On the example, I actually used a bigger one the last time. So if you want to go bigger, you can feel free to use that as the guide and then just add an extra layer around. I think that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So of course you can see that. Oh, good. You can see that. All right. So the next step is we're going to now paint the inside of the sun. And I am going to take a combination of yellow flame and spiced carrot. How nice is that? Mix them together. Start to add them on. And just depending how much orange you want or how much yellow. You can see that's really orange, so I probably will want to put a little more yellow in, and I'll just squeeze that right on to where I'm painting. I'm going to start to decide how I want to place these sun rays. Again, as you can see, I made some extra long sun rays, and I need to decide where I want those words to be. It's lovely. I'm very happy with that. So I'll probably do something like this. So I'm just going to leave it like that for now and just let it sit and see if I want to keep it with that flow. So while the yellow of the sun is drying and while these strips are waiting to see if that's where I'm going to leave it, I'll now go through these magazines, and what I want to do is I want to come up with 3 or 4 different words. Should say that anywhere from 3 or 4 to 10 words that I'm going to start to place strategically on those sunbursts of things I'm feeling today, or a vision that I have for where God's taking my life, that type of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the camera, let you have some time to look through those magazines that you have before you, and then we'll come back and start placing the sun rays in their final position and the words. Now the other option, of course, is if you decided to use the word shine, you can see how nicely that's going to go and pop against that background. You would then take this time to start cutting out the word shine. All right, so here I am back, and always great to look in Oprah's magazines because you always find fabulous little sayings. I found What I Know for Sure and Adventures, Take Action Now, Good for You, Ask for What I Want, No, and then Your Best Begins Here. So just really lovely sayings. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on adding these sun rays on. So go ahead and get your Mod Podge. And I'll be honest with you, I am one to use my fingers. So I will use my fingers. You do not have to. You probably, if you're in a group setting, you're probably not doing this. But you just start to add it on. and then place it where you want it to go. And what I like about Mod Podge is that it gives it a little bit of shine. And so I like where these first three are sitting, and so I'm going to keep them that way. And then don't worry about if any are off the page. You can decide to cut those off if you like, or just leave them on. I mean, it's again your project and what you're experiencing as you're going through creating this project. So, but we can feel free at the end to cut those off if need be. And if you didn't want to do this, obviously, with your fingers, you can always use a paintbrush. Just be really sure to clean it pretty quickly, because it is like glue and it will ruin that paintbrush if you don't get it off fairly quickly. All right, so I'm gonna go with those, and I'm thinking I'm gonna come back over here. Remember, I was telling you about how I had these pages that were already put stencils on. So I think I'm going to add one of those as my last option. So I'll just cut it. Just angle it the way I'd like. So again, one of the things that I love about doing projects is really, I love having messy hands. I love touching the paint. I love touching the Mod Podge. Again, I know that's not for everybody, but it is definitely part of my feeling a part of the process. Is just getting my hands dirty. Now, if you have some stencils where the sun ray doesn't hit the sun just right, just come back over and get some of your paint. Just extend out the sun so that it matches it, meets up right up against it. Okay. So I'm going to go wash my hands now, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see, the Mod Podge is almost dry, but more choices to make while we're waiting. So in the example that I showed you, there was a little bit of a swirl that was in the middle made by red paint, and then these white dots, and then if you look a little closer you can see the swirls in between. So again, this is up to you whether or not you want to do that. I will show you some options while we're waiting on the Mod Podge of the sun rays to dry. So I'm going to go ahead and put some red paint on there. You make that swirl in the middle. I use my pencil as a guide, and I just kind of, well, it's like doodling really. You just trace around, and then you come back around the other way. This is just a guidepost, so obviously you don't have to do it perfectly, and you don't even need to use the pencil if you don't want to. You can just go ahead and start painting if you like. My favorite things about painting, especially in a group, is just seeing all the different choices that everyone makes. Just love it. It just reminds me of how individual God has made us, and that it just invites us to stop trying to be like everyone else and just let your uniqueness come out. So you might see here the paint's not holding as well as it could, and that's probably, well, it's not probably, it is, because it's still a little bit wet. So I'm going to work with that a little bit. Again, always use those, what you might think of as mistakes, as opportunities to adapt and grow, because boy, doesn't that happen in life all the time, right? If you would like, if you notice that's happening with your paint, again, feel free to put it near a fan or use a hair dryer to dry it. Can do that. Again, we can do those doodles in there. All of this is optional. As you can see, Mod Podge is drying clear. Wanted to make sure that you saw that so you wouldn't get nervous about whether or not that's going to dry properly if you've never used Mod Podge before. I have to wait while that's drying. We can go ahead and start taking those words that you found and figuring out where you want to put them. Of course, you know I love my fly free there. No, and then take action now.